Welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. We have an exciting episode for you to check out today, centered around succession planning of advisors. We have a fellow financial advisor on today, Rose Price, who's a friend of mine. I've known her for quite a while. She sits on an AEC, Advisor Engagement Council with me with Cetera. And one of the nice things about Rose's practice, which is VLP Advisors out of the Virginia area, is she's grown that practice through succession planning. Over the years, she's been able to help over 8 individuals retire themselves from the financial services industry, and she's been able to retain 95% of those clients through those transitions, which is a phenomenal rate. Today, we're going to pick her brain a little bit on how she's doing it and how their firm is structured to help advisors retire and also to recruit advisors that are looking for partnered support. So without further ado, let's get into today's segment with Rose Price of VLP Financial Advisors. All right. Well, welcome back. We have a great session today. As I had mentioned, Rose Price is with us. Gave her bio a little bit in our intro, but I wanted her to introduce herself as well. We're going to talk all things onboarding of a succession planning today. I personally have known Rose for the last couple of years. I think she's a phenomenal businesswoman and financial planner, doing it the right way with succession planning. We see alike on a lot of different issues when it comes to succession planning. So hopefully today's higher level of conversation can help other advisors out there shop out maybe the right practice for their succession plan. And I think more importantly, identify or see some issues from the buyer side that a succession individual that's shopping out their book may not understand of where we come in with valuation and services and why it's important for us to maintain a high level of retention. So with that, I'll let Rose introduce herself, tell you a little bit about her practice. I went through some of her history and stuff on the bio, but it's always good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me today. So we're a firm in Northern Virginia. I am currently the president of the firm, VLP. We've got about 22 employees in the Vienna, Virginia area. We've got 9 advisors on staff. We have actually helped, we've bought 8 practices and merged them in. And we are currently, our founder, Bruce Vaughn, who started what is VLP today, he has been phasing down. And we ourselves have done our own succession plan with Bruce, who is now just a 10% owner and transitioned the entire leadership team. So lots of moving parts. We always say that we learn something new every transition and every practice purchase. So it'll be fun to kind of dive into these topics.
Oh yeah. How true is that though, right? Yeah. And I think for advisors listening, I think the key takeaway from that is that in learning something new each time, it isn't a cookie cutter approach.
No, it really isn't. I mean, every practice is different, and you have culture that you have to figure out how's that going to work. I mean, that's one of the biggest things we look at when we're going to do a merger or an acquisition. But yeah, everyone's a little different. Everyone does business a little differently. Potentially, they have different clients in different areas. So it takes a lot of time to kind of figure out what makes sense, who fits well, and where we might have some hiccups or headaches.
Yeah, so let's start through that, right? We want to navigate potential advisors that are looking to transition out of the business through that process, right? And I think every advisor always says they want to buy a book, but I always tell that succession planning person as they're shopping out is, can they onboard, can they service, and can they consistently make sure that you're paid for the book, right? So what does your firm, and I know Iron Tree looks at a little bit as well, what does your firm look at as the determination of whether or not you even want to entertain buying the book? Because correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes turning away the book is the best business decision we can make.
Absolutely. And we've done that in the past too, when our visions don't line up. That's been one. I think number one is culture and understanding really if you're going to retain any of their staff, because we've had scenarios where we onboard the staff. We're keeping some of the staff. Matter of fact, our director of client services actually was in one of our last purchases. She was one of the client service team members. So I think culture is a big thing. I think a big misnomer is when people are buying or selling is they think I got to get the biggest number. And what we've really seen in that case, because going back to your point, can they get paid? We've seen deals where people have had to go back and renegotiate because it wasn't a good deal.
Yeah.
It was a good deal for the seller, but when they really put pen to paper and did the economics and they're actually living it, they can't afford to pay this person in the deal. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. Certainly, culture is a big one. Understanding the economics, because if you are going to retain their staff or not retain their staff, what is the age of the clients on the book? Or are you buying a book that has everybody who's 70 plus, or do we have a younger age group? And what kind of issues would you have there? And then really, what do you have internally to be able to, timeline? Do you have the ability to devote the time? Because I think people really underestimate the time it takes to do a transition well.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of communication that you need to not only communicate to the clients, but to the staff, to the advisors, to your team. And I think that's a big area that we really look at. Hey, where are we? What do they have? What type of investments? How are they managing money? What are they doing? What's their business model? Because maybe they're doing something you don't do.
Yeah.
And you have to consider, do we want to keep doing that?
Yeah. Well, that's brings up a perfect point, is that a lot of times advisors that are selling their practice are looking for somebody that manages their money the same way.
Yeah.
And my recommendation to them always is, look, you and I can get in a car and go from Virginia to New York. We could take 17 different ways, but we're still going to get there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You might be a money manager, emphasis on individual securities, UTI, all different investments out there.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't mean the person buying your book has to do it the same way, and nor should I pigeonhole your buyer base into that specific way of managing, because you may be limiting yourself of who's going to bid on your book or buy your book if you're expecting them to manage it the exact same way. Because we all know, as advisors, nobody can manage as best as us, right? Right. We have the secret sauce. We know everything, but advisors can't get that out of their head when they're going to shop out, buying a book. So yeah, I would totally agree with you. That's the number one point I think any advisor listening to this podcast should take away is the management of the money isn't as important as the who.
Yeah.
Right? Who's going to service the book or who's going to onboard. I know for us, we send them through a refining process based on what we think retention rate is going to be. You might ask XYZ times multiplier of EBITDA, revenue, however you want to do it, but the buyer is looking at a retention standpoint. So if you don't have a proven service record, like you said, how old's the book, you don't have the client base of referrals underneath, we have to discount it in our mind, right?
Yeah, I think we really approach it, and I think even if you're on the buyer or seller side, you really have to approach it has to be a win-win-win. And first, it's got to be a win for the client. Is this going to be a scenario that the client's going to get the service that you've provided at a level at the same that you would give or higher? Because in some cases, maybe they have, the buyer might have services that you don't offer, or they do things differently. As you mentioned, don't pigeonhole anybody. Is it a win for the seller? Is it a cultural fit? Do they feel like their clients be well served here? That leads into the retention rate. And then for the buyer, being able, I think the win, a lot of times the win is, can we keep the retention? And two, can we afford to pay this? Is this book going to produce the income that it's going to be able to be a win for everybody? I think that's the way we approach every deal. And we kind of list down, what's the pros and cons, because there's always going to be cons. We're naive if we think every deal, we're the best at every deal.
Yeah.
We're going to be the best option, because as you said, sometimes the best option is not being the option.
Yeah. Right. Well, and then also asking the questions. I know VLP as well as Iron Tree have done a good job of building staff around being able to successfully onboard a practice. When an advisor is shopping out, they usually don't ask those questions of how are you going to onboard 300 or 1,000 clients at a time. And you've got that dialed in. I know we've got that dialed in. We want to talk maybe a little bit about, VLP's thought to staffing and being able to, successfully onboard that book and service the client.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to be able to carve out time, which means you have to have capacity. So as we look at, we run our firm on EOS. So every year when we do our 2-day annual, we do our quarterly, we're always looking at capacity. If there was an opportunity, we test that capacity. If we were to find an advisor that we wanted to onboard or a firm and it's got 200 clients or 300 clients, who would we need on staff to do that? And how long would that take? Because we've had that history, we know the moving parts and have a good idea how long it'll take to do those things, what resources will be needed. So we always are carrying capacity, and we can test, we can stress test that in certain times. But we want to know, hey, if we're going to have that, how long, how many staff do we have that we can position to only be able to focus on this part of it? Who would do the investment review? Who's going to look at the book? What if we have to merge a CRM? So all these pieces, it's not only who do you have internally, what resources outside would you have to tap? Would there be an expense for that? But again, I think the biggest thing is, as you alluded to, I know Iron Tree does a good job about it, is you have to think about, it's great, even if they are bringing staff, that staff doesn't know your workflows, doesn't know how you run the firm and your SOPs. So you have to understand that there's going to be, you have to go back to go forward. You're going to have to slow things down to teach if there's people coming in. But if you have the staff and you have the flexibility and the capacity, it's a much easier opportunity to say, hey, here's how we got it. Here's who's going to be assigned to help you transition, because you also want to be careful how many people you have in that transition scenario. You don't want too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good shout out to our broker dealer of why these types of things are available to us specifically with Cetera. Is at least how I view it, and it sounds like you view it the same way. Is we're gonna be the tip of the spear with the onboarding. We're gonna be the hands-on helping somebody transition their practice over, but we have a redundancy system in Cetera of a transition team that can also help with repapering and onboarding of clients, and then we view that as our secondary. Right? Yeah. They help expedite, but they're not really the person that you want. And unfortunately, you go to some of the other firms. I'm not going to name some of the other firms that have 3 letters and things along that lines. But it's their succession planning team, and you're not being onboarded by necessarily the rep that's purchasing your practice, which I think is a huge mistake.
I agree. Yeah.
And
certainly, because when you have a team that doesn't know the client, and who's also going to be taking over the client, things get lost in translation. When it's transactional and that's all you're focusing on, that takes the human part out of it, kind of like a AI kind of scenario, right? And there's errors. You can have scenarios where clients can get uncomfortable or be unhappy because something's in wrong. So again, we've had that scenario where we've used the back, but someone's still got to check it. Yeah. You still need that staff to say, hey, this isn't quite right. Yes, this is in there. But I agree with you 100% that, it's really important to have somebody from both parties involved in that transition to make sure it goes smoothly. And once again, it's that win-win-win, and that the client isn't getting lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, so shop that out, right? And those are the check marks. Yeah. VLP has this, Iron Tree has this, XYZ doesn't. Well, that's why we've been so successful with onboarding, right? I mean, you're 8 practices in, we're 7 practices in, and we've had, not glitches, but we've had master success because we've got it dialed in. So if somebody's looking at VLP, they need to look at, like you said, what's that value add service to the client? And I would say this format, the digital podcast tech space, is something that senior advisors who aren't used to this space really need to put as one of their primary checklists, because their books are going to be transitioning to millennials, right, or beyond, which work in this space, right? It's a different world we live in as those dollars transfer. It's not the traditional sit down for 2 hours over coffee, let's lay out the plan. It's, hey, do you have TikTok? Do you have this? Right? It's the list of digital stuff. So just the podcast series alone should be a major check mark if you're a succession planning rec looking and saying, hey, do they offer digital services, right? I find that's important because, it's kind of like that celebrity effect, right? If you onboard 300 clients, you and I individually can't get through that in 3 months or 6 months. Yeah. But we can send a link to our episode or podcast, and we can have them familiar with our face, our tone, our voice. So by the time we meet them, the client feels like they've already known us, right? And that's the super value add.
Yeah, and it helps with retention rates. I think you as clearly I know Iron Tree has a great retention rate. That's the proof in the pudding. So when you are a buyer looking to say, or you're a seller looking at these various buyers, and you're going through your checklist, if they don't have any experience, you have to be, okay, how do I feel about this group? What are their accomplishments now? What are they capable of? But if they have, what's the retention rate?
Sure.
We run well north of 95%, but that's because, again, trial and error, and that's been across the board, but it's also about that win-win scenario, but also having the checklist. We as a buyer have a checklist. We go with a seller, the checklist also, and say, what's important to you, what's important, and what's important to the client. And that has to be what our checklist and what we're going to work off of. Did we communicate to the client? Where are we on the status of the transaction? How long is it taking us to get the paperwork out and get it back? All those pieces will help in the success of the transition, not only just the client, but anybody who might be staying on for a short period of time or staying on as a team member. I think it's really important to understand what that process looks like and to have a framework to follow.
Sure, and you alluded to a little earlier, just switching gears to that onboarding process is as a buyer, we are looking at culture also as well, right? Does your staff meld and merge with our firms, right? Or is there a group of advisors, and this is where our teaming is an advantage, right? Where you have, I think, 9 advisors, right? We have 7, but the way I look at that, and the way a seller should look at that, is that's 9 or 7 personalities that are different.
Yes.
And that's an advantage because clients gravitate towards different personalities.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
We have some staff that have specialties and niches. We, even in our own marketing and our own podcast, when we have someone come in, they might meet with one advisor, and we might go, you know what? You're actually a better fit let me introduce you to so-and-so because you're in a space that they really have expertise in. So to your point, it is good when there is depth on the bench, because you might have clients, if you have 300 clients in this practice, obviously not everybody's going to go to one advisor because some of these advisors are going to have clients. But the good news is that we can find a home for each client, lining them up, going, oh, what is this scenario with a little bit of history? Oh, they'd be great for John. They'd be great for Mark or for Rose, and that really, again, helps with that retention rate.
Yeah, right. Because some of your advisors, just like ours, are more technical. Some have more charisma and are more vocal and jovial, and each client reacts a little bit differently on that stuff. So, so that's another key point. And the other thing I wanted to touch on today, kind of with that onboarding, is one, it's a negotiation, right? If you're solid in your I need to get this price, that's never a good thing because it should be a negotiation, right? The best negotiations have people leaving neither 100% happy or 100% mad.
but fair.
But fair, right? So really, I think both sides looking at each person's desires is important. Shifting gears a little bit is, as a firm that's acquiring, there's a distinct advantage of staffing ourselves in the sense that we can hire better because we have onboarded books of practices of clients that need to be serviced. You want to talk about how do you present VLP to, say, a 40-year-old that's got 8 years of experience in the industry and you need help, right, servicing a book. How do you use that from a recruiting standpoint to paint that longevity picture of somebody coming over as a recruit, not a succession, but a recruit to VLP? I know we do it in different ways, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, for the ability to buy, practice, and merge them in, we've had a lot of success, and we can discuss how that's worked. I'm living proof. I started here I'll be celebrating 25 years next month. I started here when I was 25, and Bruce had in the process was actually had the second purchase was he was working on and merging into the firm. Uh, I started out as a portfolio manager. I'm now president of the firm and one of the advisors. So we can tell the story of, hey, you can do anything here. If you're an advisor and you want to get from $50 million to 100 or 150, here's how we've done it in the past. Here's the proof. Here's the advisors we've done this with. We've already built the infrastructure. We have teams. Every advisor has a portfolio manager and a client service manager supporting them. So you're not here alone. You get to do, the goal is to get everybody in our firm, our goal is to have every advisor over 100 million in assets managing. So that is what we work towards. That's our framework. We show the structure of how we do the expectation, what that's going to look like. Because again, you kind of mentioned it earlier. When you're onboarding, you can't onboard 50 clients at once. There's just too much knowledge. You're going to lose something in the personal connection. That's something that even when you're bringing someone in who's going to take over a section of the book, it's got to be an introduction over time. So that relationship can work, and you want that relationship to flourish. So we have that conversation. Here's the expectation. We pay them a salary until they get to a point where they are what we consider profitable and that they're on what we consider our grid. So they get a percentage of the assets they're managing. But we have that framework built out. We actually have a drawn out path. Here's what expectations are. Here's the different levels of becoming till you get to senior financial advisor. Here's the expectations. And here's what VLP is going to do to help you. I think that's key, because I'm sure, as Iron Tree, you talk a little bit about how your team approaches it, but we're all in this together. This isn't, we're not here expecting someone, we'll give them a desk and a phone and say, build your book. Yeah. Because all the clients are owned by VLP. We're all building VLP.
Yeah. Which is how I came in the business. Here's your phone, build your your book, right?
And Bruce, our founder, but thankfully I didn't have to do that. But to your point, that's why we're seeing a lot of younger advisors not making in this business. If they can find a firm like Iron Tree, VLP, and others, similar, where they have a path, they have support, they get to learn along the way. Our philosophy, it takes about 5 to 7 years to become a really good advisor, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
If you think back, you're 3 years in, someone asks a question, you go, let me get back to you. I'm not sure. But you have a resource here, as you do at Iron Tree. You have that think tank that you can go to and say, hey, the situation came up. How would you handle it? What should I be thinking about differently? And I think that's huge, big. And also having, we have professional development. So we provide up to $2,500 a year for our staff to do anything that they choose. If they want to get a new credential, if they want to get the CFP, we fully support that. A little bit more expensive. But again, it's all about how we're growing, not only as a firm, but as professionals in our team. And that's really important to us. So as we're talking to that 40-year-old who's been in the business 8 years, usually, if they're on their own, they've hit a level of complexity, and they're on a crossroad. They have to decide, do I hire staff? Yeah. Do I want to manage staff? How much do I want to do that? Or do I want to join a team who has all the infrastructure built in? Because I really just like working with clients. Then that's a great fit for us, and I'm sure for Iron Tree also.
Yeah, and if teams are properly structured, they don't reach a point of saturation. Correct. Versus an individual who, and we see it, at least in the upstate capital region of New York, the average advisor with 30 years of experience is between maybe 35 to 50 million range of assets, right? For us, that's the point of saturation that most people have, because they don't have the structure or the team to continually grow and service past that, which is fine, right? Because people will get there and then they have that nice work-life balance and they say, all right, I'm happy with who I have.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you want to be a lifestyle practice, that's one way you can do that, but you will hit a ceiling, because there's only so many hours and so many days, and you can't leverage staff, and there's only so much you can do with technology.
Yeah, I do like your 100 million level of expectation on advisor. I'm gonna scarf that from you a little bit. And for the listeners that don't know, Rose and I sit together on an advisor engagement council with Cetera, a higher end council representing our channels, and we have the fortunate ability to have that think tank workshop of like, what's your practice doing in your channel versus what we're doing, and we can take these bits and pieces and make ourselves better, which I think think is also a testament to Cetera's commitment to us. Also, on a side note, we are both diehard Steeler fans. So I know you went to Ireland, right, for their game this year. How was that experience?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that experience?
Oh, it was fabulous. It's the first time I've been to Ireland, so we got to go over and play a little bit of golf. It was fun being in Ireland and just seeing how they showed up at the games, because there was obviously a lot of fans from the U.S., but it was a lot of fun being in a soccer stadium watching a football game.
And we won that game, right? I believe.
We won that game, and they flew in our announcer.
Oh, wow. Really okay.
It was a Steeler home game. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Rose, I thank you so much for your time today, and that we could, spend some time really delving into, succession planning from at least from our standpoint, which is good. And hopefully listeners can reach out to both of us. Do you want to, let an advisor that may be looking for a succession plan know how they can reach VLP? What's the best contact? What's the best way to engage in that conversation with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to our website, vlpfa.com. There's access. All the advisors are listed there. And we have a form where you can do an intro form where they can request information. That's the best way. Or they can call the office. Everything's listed on our website.
Yeah, and I can speak as a testament to at least seeing how Rose works. She is extremely detailed and methodical in these types of things, which is what you want. You want a professional. You want somebody that knows that process, that can see roadblocks or things that will create disturbances ahead of time to kind of avoid them. And then if there are in that transition process, knows how to pivot and shift to make sure it's a more enjoyable experience for you to onboard for there. So definitely check out her website, reach out to her. Any demographic area that you're specifically looking in, Virginia or anything along that lines?
Northern Virginia. We do have a sales branch in North Carolina, but Virginia is actually the state of Virginia, because the way things are for us. Maryland, because we're very close. 5 minutes I can be in Maryland from my office. We're in Tyson's Corner. But that's our primary area where we have additional office space.
All right, excellent. And also, if those advisors are looking in different areas as well, Iron Tree is available for you. We specifically try to recruit out of the 41 cities that Cetera Investors channel has offices already, because we can utilize those offices. For us, it's logistically being able to have a physical presence in a city. So there's 41 cities that we look at for recruiting out of. So if you're interested, you can reach Iron Tree Financial at irontreefinancial.com is the best way. There's a succession planning link on there specifically designed for advisors. So they have a little bit different of a website experience and interaction experience with us. And you can check out both our podcasts. Ours is called Your Time, Your Money, because your time is just as valuable as your money. And Rose, your podcast
is a Live Greater View.
Live Greater View, which I love. I love watching that as well. So once again, feel free to reach out to either of our firms, engage in that conversation, and I think you'll see a stark difference between our firms and what else is out there, and why we've been so successful in our practice. So Rose, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mark, and it's great seeing you.
Great. Have a great day. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Your Time, Your Money. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share this with friends, family, coworkers, anyone else that you think might be interested. If you do have questions or topics, you can always email them to irontreefinancial@ceterais.com. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, Google Play, and many other sources that were available. And as always, it's your time and your money. Cetera Investors is the marketing name of Cetera Investment Services. Securities and insurance products are offered through Cetera Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.